Welcome back to Practical Game Design. I recently made the switch from Godot 3 to Godot 4, and it is a huge difference. So I'm still getting used to the new features, but I thought today I'd like to talk about something very important, which is unit testing. And in particular, not just unit testing, but test-driven development. The idea with test-driven development is that you write unit tests before you implement features, and then use those unit tests to verify that the features work as expected. The benefit to doing this is that it forces you to write better code, and of course along the way you get a bunch of tests that you can run to make sure your code hasn't broken. So I'm going to be making a simple tic-tac-toe game. Obviously tic-tac-toe is not terribly exciting, but the point of this is more to look at how we can use unit tests for our games. So the first thing we're going to need is our unit testing framework. We're going to use GdUnit4. GdUnit4 in the asset library makes my engine crash when I try to install it from here. So instead we're going to install it directly from GitHub. So here's the GitHub page for GdUnit4. We're just going to go ahead and download this, and then we'll go to our projects folder where we have this project set up. We'll extract this, and then we'll just drag this add-ons folder into our project folder and remove the zip. Then going into our project, we re-import. Now we have this add-ons folder with GdUnit4 in it, and last thing we need to do is enable it. We go to plugins, we click enable, and now we have this GdUnit tab where we can run tests. The way that tests work is, let's say we create a script. We'll call it test script. This is just for demonstration purposes. And let's say we have a function called, returns 5, which just returns the number 5. With GdUnit installed, we can right-click on this, create a test. So we can see a couple things. First of all, it generated this test inside this test folder. We can also see it's filled out this function. This function is not yet implemented, so we'll need to do that. But we can already run it and see what happens. If we right-click on this and... Okay, so it wasn't showing the run tests a moment ago, but I went and clicked on rerun all unit tests, and now it is. If it doesn't show the option for you immediately, you can just do that. But anyway, so I right-click on this. I say run tests or debug tests. We're just going to do run tests. Then what it'll do is it will run through all of the tests in this file and see which ones pass. Now, of course, right now this test is not implemented, so it fails. And you can see the failure right here. So for our test script, we can instantiate an object of this type. So let's say var test script equals, we have the path to the source file here. So we can just say preload source.new. And our assertion is going to say that test script dot returns 5 should be equal to 5. So the way we do this is we say assert, it's an integer, so assert int testscript.returns5 dot is equal to 5. Also, just as an aside, the documentation for GdUnit4 is right here. You can access it quickly by clicking on the doc button, and I'll put this link in the description. Okay, so we've created our test, and then to run it, we just do run tests. So it's warning us about orphan nodes. We can just use auto-free to avoid that. That's explained in the documentation. But once we fix that, we see that our script passes. If we have a different function, let's say returns 6, doesn't return 6, let's say it just returns 0, and we create a test for that. The first test passed, and the second test failed, and it tells you it was expecting 6, but it was 0. And so now what we can do is we can go in here and we can fix our function and then go back and rerun the test. And this time it should pass. So this is how we are going to test our code. And we're going to develop our tic-tac-toe game by creating functions like this and then making sure that they pass the tests that we write to describe their behavior. So let's get rid of these test scripts. And now we can start thinking about how we want this project to work.